Welcome in, Notre Dame fans. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. We're back again for the Monday live show. Some of you guys may be tuning in after the 7:45 Monday start time, but that's okay. We're just going to be talking about all Notre Dame football news from this week. And most of this stuff that is covered in today's show is going to be in the videos throughout the week. So don't worry, y'all aren't going to be missing out when it comes to any of that. We can kind of wait to get started a little bit, but I'll just give the rundown for what exactly we're going to be talking about today. We're talking coaching staff news. A few things happened as well. Front office move. We got a new GM. That video, if you've seen it, went over who Mike Martin was. Well, we got Mike Martin. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the quarterback battle that we're about to see in the spring. It looks like it's a three-man race, but we'll see if anybody distances themselves or if there's anybody starting at 1, anybody starting at 2, and so on. What else do we got on the schedule today? Well, we're going to be taking a look at the depth charts a little bit, not a ton. We're talking just on the offensive side of the ball. So we're just talking running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and the offensive line. Not really too much else outside of that. And then we're going to just probably end the live today in with the portal and the winter portal's been closed for a while, so we're just going to be talking about the 2025 full assessment for that period, and then the early signing period, and everything like that. And then I think there was a really great article that was out there talking about the what exactly does each front office in college football need and their GM. What are they looking for? It's a very new position in the world of college football, so we're going to be talking about exactly what teams need. And then USC, is the rivalry over? Notre Dame got 8 combine invitations so from those players, so we're going to also take a look at that. So all of those different topics going to happen in today's show. All will get their own deep dive throughout this week as more news drops, and then obviously as just with the specific videos, we'll have plenty of information on those as we go. But yes, coaching staff news. That's what I said I was going to start with. That's where we begin. Mike Martin obviously now is the new general manager for Notre Dame football. Huge guy with a ton of NFL experience. I talked about him in the video earlier this week. It's Notre Dame makes a huge hire. Check that out if you want everything about Mike Martin. We're going to be talking about exactly what are these front office types in college football looking for in a GM. There was a really great article by The Athletic that just went into a deep dive about what exactly is needed. And I thought it was really interesting. And it's they kind of broke it up into different sections. So the very first one was the job starts with player evaluation. Now, Mike Martin has been a scout. He's kind of a lifelong scout. That's how I would describe him. Got his start as a scout and then just consistently went, climbing up the ladder where he's head scout, advanced scout, or anything above that, like player personnel, like department of like player development, stuff like that. That's where he was. That's where he's come from. Now, that was Bowden's biggest strengths were, his relationship building and his program marketing. And it still starts with player evaluation. We were talking about just there's, all of this room, but you need to first have a good player evaluation. You have to do a ton of other stuff, but that's where the job starts. The other group that they lumped into what a general manager needs to do for Notre Dame and for anybody really out there is those evaluations go beyond the portal and recruiting. The most important evaluations will be on Notre Dame's own rosters, essentially what it's also saying. So you can take a look at the portal, what other teams have, what you could potentially want to take, and you can look at recruiting, which is the classic scout, take a look at that huddle film, what have you. But the most important thing that you end up doing is taking a look at your own roster. Now, this article from The Athletic was taken as almost like a little mini poll of 3 anonymous GMs currently in college football. What do you guys say is the most important things in the job description? First thing, the evaluations go beyond the portal and recruiting. You have to look at your own team. And also the job starts specifically with player evaluation. Mike Martin has shown that he can do that at the very least. I mean, we're talking about a guy who did it with the Lions, right? So moving on, will the NFL model work though? This is something that Notre Dame was kind of a little slower to adjusting right when everything just hit the fan. When we were talking NIL, transfer portal, everything just kind of exploded all at once. Notre Dame was a little slow. Now they are kind of putting in an NFL model. They all had it's hard to say if this is going to completely work. You got North Carolina with Bill Belichick out there. Florida just hired the general manager from the Atlanta Falcons. Clemson just hired a lead evaluator from the LA Chargers. Will these NFL approaches work at the college level? When you take an NFL guy, can you put him in this GM position and say you were a scout or you were somewhere along that front office that looked at the players, evaluated them? Can you be a GM? Because we know that that's where it starts. We know that the player evals is exactly what this job description is based off of. Will the NFL model still be able to work, or is there still just too much of that college sprinkle? These guys who remain anonymous say maybe, maybe not. Guys coming from the college ranks are more valuable, said a former GM. The NFL guys are good at judging value. Basically, a guy might not be a value in the second round, but would be a value in the third, but you're still picking them. In college, they pick you. You've still got to get guys to say yes. So I think it's that classic, yeah, you're drafted and they have to come here, blah, 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 all this other stuff, and then having to convince those recruits. So that's another interesting thing. I thought we'll see. I still say, based off of like looking from afar, I would give the nod to the NFL guys. Truthfully, I think it'll very much turn into that. We just saw SEC Big Ten meeting just the other day, I believe, where they're talking about the future of college football and the playoff. Well, it seems like this entire sport's moving towards the NFL. So why wouldn't that position eventually get there? So you might as well be ahead of the curve, right? The other thing that they talked about, and another conclusion, and one of the other pillars that they say is defining this new GM position in college football, is the head coach better know what he wants. So, in other words, you need to be on the same page, because on one hand, Freeman doesn't need to hire someone much different than what he had previously, right? Because he knows what he wants. You kind of are understanding, the idea of what exactly is going to build this program. But on the other, he needs to also trust the player evaluators and whoever, Mike Martin specifically, into building this program. You have to find a happy medium. And they said the head coach at least better know who exactly or what exactly he wants this program to be. And I think that that's another small wrinkle in all of this, which I find really interesting. So will Mike Martin work? I think so. I think if you're taking a guy from the NFL, I think that they're better off than they would be regardless, or however else. But let me know what you guys think. I'm, seeing a couple people stopping by. What you think of the Mike Martin hire? I mean, I think it's good. I don't really. I'm not going to sit here and say that we have I have the crystal ball and that an NFL guy's going to work no matter what. But if this game is moving towards the NFL style, and we're taking somebody from the NFL who, yes, he wasn't a general manager, but he was a head scout, and that's the main goal here, I think he'll be just fine. I think he'll be just fine, and Notre Dame's got plenty of money. So another thing that I've wanted to mention and wanted to gloss over here during this live, right before we get into a little bit more talk about the quarterbacks, is this really interesting thing the USC athletic director, Jennifer Cohen, said. This is from another athletic story that I thought was really cool. I just read about it today, and it was kind of her not non-committal quotes about the rivalry between USC and Notre Dame, but it was kind of just that, it was like a whole word salad, which I thought was interesting, because you want to at least say, yes, these two are going to play forever. But, who knows, right? Notre Dame and USC have played 95 times since 1926. And the Athletic sat down with Jennifer Cohen and talked about the rivalry and how it can continue on. And she basically said that, in a perfect world, that Notre Dame would take on the Trojans every year in football going forward. However, she allowed herself a lot of outs as she described anything but perfect conditions to keep the rivalry going. End quote. She said, "It's such an important series to our fans at both universities. I've said this before and I'll say it again. In an ideal world, we're going to keep playing each other." I mean, obviously, there could be a long list of inactive rivalries in college football, and there could be, maybe just as long list of active rivalries and a small list of rivalries that have actually came back because of conference realignment. I don't really know if this is going to be one of those rivalries that ever leaves because of conference realignment, but always whenever you hear something like this, she's very, she's newer to the scene. I believe she's been the AD for USC for about a year and a half now. So who knows? Maybe she's got a little bit of a different perspective on the rivalry than the former AD or the one before them, right? Because you're not always built in, and it's a completely different world. So I thought it was fine. I thought it was interesting. She gave immediate reasons why this is anything but a perfect world for the rivalry, which I also thought was pretty cool. With that being said, the landscape has changed. Now, this is a quote dramatically. We're now playing in a conference where we fly back and forth across the country every week, and college football playoff expansion and how you get access to the CFP and how things are seeded and selected. Those to me are important unanswered questions. So we remain in conversations with Notre Dame about the series. I think we're clear to each other that we're going to evaluate what's best, and it's my job to evaluate what's best for our student athletes and our program. Cohen made sure to close the response on a high note, though. As we keep doing that, we're excited to go back to South Bend next year. I don't think that this is going away, but that same old thing is you're just hedging your bets. You're just watching your back, looking over your shoulder, saying, hey, I mean, probably these teams are going to play forever, you would hope, or at least within our lifetimes. But flying across the country, I get it. It's tough because Notre Dame does it plenty, and they go to wherever else, will have them, right? Out of the country. But that was something that the USC AD said, and something I'm definitely going to get into over the next handful of days. I'll probably be talking a little bit rivalries now that we're getting deep in the offseason because I already did a quarterback preview. But speaking of the quarterback preview, let's circle right back. I made a video just the other day about this quarterback battle. This is going to be spicy. We haven't had a quarterback battle since Deshaun Kaiser and Malik Zaire, and that was almost a decade ago. And Brian Kelly ruled it a draw, and we had 4 wins that season, and we sucked. And maybe it was because of the quarterback battle, but it was also probably just because of the play. Then, unfortunately for Deshaun Kaiser, he left to go to the NFL and got drafted by the Browns. But I digress. We have a huge quarterback battle on our hands. And I declared in the video that Steve Angeli would be the number one guy right now. Just as of right now, he should be the number one guy, right? And CJ Carr, I think he's healthy, but we haven't seen anything. And then Kenny Minchie is that dark horse, but a lot of people seem to really like him. I like him too, right? There's nothing wrong with him. Obviously, he's just younger, and we haven't seen any of these guys play. I mentioned the snap count for all of these guys. Angeli's just, is older. He's got 245 snaps. Minchie's got 17. That's second on the roster. Like, what are we talking about? CJ Carr has had 4 career snaps. That's difficult. That's difficult. But we'll see. We'll see who ends up playing well in the spring. I don't know if they're going to completely declare a guy unless they just absolutely blow everybody away. I can remember back when Sam Hartman pulled up, and Notre Dame did the same thing with Riley Leonard too. This last year where they're going to be non-committal, fair to some of the other guys. That might be seen as unfair in certain aspects, but try to be honest and say, hey, look, we're going to let you guys play this out. And if the second guy, it might not be Riley Leonard, and he might need to have an amazing spring game, but he's got a shot. If he has an amazing spring practice like for the entire month, well, you know what? Then maybe he won it, but it was Riley Leonard's job to lose, essentially. Same thing with Sam Hartman, kind of. But I remember there was a huge thing about oh man, Sam Hartman. And Tyler Buchner was right there, so we'll see. Obviously, we knew Sam Hartman, but it wasn't like he had the job immediately. And then during the spring game, Sam Hartman killed, and Tyler Buchner was transferring to Alabama like 3 days later. So is this a situation where somebody's got that lead and we just don't know? Maybe. But my guess right now is I don't know how Steve Angeli doesn't, at least on the very first day of that practice, start taking those reps with the number ones. Just because of the Sun Bowl and because of that drive against Penn State. I know that's leveraging a lot on very little, but he's got more than the other guys from what we've seen. So I would have to give it to them. But I get it. Angeli can't feel pressure coming. That's a huge problem. He's not perfect. He's not perfect whatsoever. And there was a moment, during that drive. Well, it just felt like that entire game was slipping away prior to that drive. Maybe we'll see something. Certainly more development. I think you're really worried when you talk about Angeli about that peak. Can with CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie being 2 guys highly rated recruits. Not that Angeli was some scrub coming out, but you're thinking that those guys can hit a peak that's much higher. And with Carr's injury, if he's back and healthy and moving again and showing some good tape out there, maybe he's looking really good. And then Minchie obviously was the third stringer for the entire year. Maybe he's got something. Maybe he's learned a thing or two. But I certainly understand. I'm not hyping up Angeli just yet, but he showed a little bit of something, and he's the only quarterback where we've seen anything from. I believe Minchie, the only game that he got into was the Purdue game. I mean, shoot, Purdue was all-time bad for even them last year. So it just depends. It just depends, I guess, on what we end up seeing. But I think it's very interesting that we're going to go into spring not really exactly knowing who the quarterback is, and at least that it's homegrown talent. Hopefully, this decision doesn't end up making two guys transfer, and maybe I think we're going to see one of these guys transfer no matter what, but hopefully it's not two, right? You're hoping that there's some sort of not two. But back in the Brian Kelly era, I almost feel like it would have just been given to Angeli just at this point, and so I'm glad that it's not like that right now. So I mean, we'll end up working, we'll end up seeing exactly what comes of this battle here. Yeah. So you got true freshman, Blake Hebert. He's going to redshirt unless the apocalypse comes. CJ Carr, redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore Kenny Minchie, redshirt junior Steve Angeli. Yeah. Looking at that order, who is going to stick around for a very long time? I think if CJ Carr doesn't win or doesn't really think he's got a true chance going into fall, I think he's out. But we'll have to wait and see. I think it's a lot of fun. Go check out that video if you haven't already. I made a video on this the other day, just kind of introducing the quarterbacks and previewing them. Ton of fun. That was part 1 of part 15 probably of this entire thing. We'll probably be talking. I might hop on here every single post practice. We're just talking what happened, like who's going to be the quarterback, because they pretty much go as far as the next guy goes, because they figured out a lot of stuff in the portal and with the recruiting classes. All right, coaching staff news, because I introduced it at the very beginning and then I circled back to Mike Martin at the GM. Now we're here. Al Golden won the Broyles Award the other day. Gave a really nice speech, so go check that out too. He is now obviously the DC for the Bengals, leaving the Notre Dame family, but it does feel like he was family. And I wanted to highlight that because I thought it was really great. The Notre Dame defense was exceptional last year. Amazing depth last year as well, especially on the defensive line. Had some young guys step up in the secondary and was just at all 3 levels very impressive. The defense had a ton of star power. Obviously, we had 8 guys go or get combine invites. Good chunk of those guys, defensive players. I went to go to the Senior Bowl, and Jack Kaiser was just killing it, right? Same with the D-line guys. I thought Riley Leonard was good. I didn't think he was anything crazy, but you get it. The defense was great. I wanted to highlight them. In 2024, the Notre Dame defense ranked first in pass efficiency defense, first in turnovers gained, first in defensive touchdowns, first in blocked kicks. I didn't even know. I honestly didn't even know that. Second in fumbles recovered, second in blocked punts, fourth in passing yards allowed, fourth in scoring defense. That was 50.5. Fifth in passes intercepted, 19. Obviously, they were ball hawks, turnover machines, and 11th in total defense, 307 yards per game given up. So much deserved. The 2024 Broyles Award winner goes to former DC Al Golden. So really great to see him win that, and awesome defensive showing this past year. Great to spotlight them. All right, I wanted to get into a little bit of the depth charts as we go into this spring. But I'm just going to run through them quick because I'm going to make specific videos on these. This is just a complete preview for what's coming up this week. Jeremiah Love. I don't even know if I should do the running backs for right now. I actually might skip this because we obviously know the 3-headed monster that we got at running back. This is just it's going to be unbelievable. These 3 guys are just going to kill it. I don't really see anything. The only thing that could hurt for the running back group is if they all just transfer. So we're moving to the wide receivers. Will Pauling comes from Wisconsin, graduate, 1,200 snaps. Jaden Greathouse, junior, 791. And then the list goes on and gets a little bit thinner. You got Jordan there at 551. And then after that, it gets a little bit thinner. KK Smith with only 92. Micah Gilbert with 43 snaps. And then we're getting into guys who haven't played more than 10 snaps. Definitely something to really be looking at. Obviously, Virginia transfer Malachi Fields is going to bolster that, but he doesn't come until the summer. So when we're looking at the depth chart for the wide receivers, we're just going to have to look at these guys and, who's playing in the spring. And Malachi Fields won't, but he did most certainly will be one of the guys playing, receiver for us pretty much every single down next year. So he should lock down one of the starting positions. Will Pauling, I did talk about him in the top transfer videos. So if you're new here, go check that out as well. We had a great portal in the winter. Will Pauling, your rise from Wisconsin, 129 career catches, 1,300 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Doing most of it in the Big Ten after transferring from Cincinnati instead of Marshall. So, I mean, considering how awful Wisconsin's quarterback play is, that was great. Obviously, they're going to have to continue to develop him and continue because he's going to want a little bit more. I believe he had a little bit of a slight drop off last season. I don't have the stats right in front of me of his season from last year, but something to really take a look at. Now, the tight end position, no bigger step back in any position than tight end, I'd say this year, which is super unfortunate. Obviously, losing Mitchell Evans to the NFL, Cooper Flanagan, torn Achilles against Georgia. That leaves Eli Raridan, came through last season healthy for the first time in his Notre Dame career. And 6-year senior Kevin Bauman struggled with injuries himself. You got sophomore Jack Larson. Ty Washington won't arrive until the summer after his transfer from Arkansas, which is unfortunate. So if you're curious as to what the snap count looks like, 672 for Eli. Cooper got 422, 203 for Kevin, and then Jack Larson's only had 7. But an older group, an older veteran group. So there could be something there if they end up having a better spring in there. I mean, health is really the main issue for the top 2 guys. But obviously welcoming in Ty Washington will be potentially pretty big for the Notre Dame tight end group, especially going into fall camp. Notre Dame used, this is an interesting fact too I wanted to mention. Notre Dame used less 12 personnel, one running back, 2 tight ends, under Den Brock last season than it did under Tommy Rees and Gerard Parker, who were both blessed with NFL talent, obviously, at that position. So they wanted to use it. We had it, but we had injuries this year too at a certain point. So the lack of tight end skill during spring ball might force a continuation of that trend, but perhaps it could open the door to something else on offense, and I think it'd be really fun. And you know what? I'd love to test these 3 quarterbacks without an NFL tight end right on the roster during the spring. So you think CJ starts? It's just going to be – I'm just excited. I mean, who can tell? I threw out the poll. I don't have the results in front of me because I can't check it on my phone. But it was really split. Like it was really interesting because the video, everybody was commenting Kenny, and then in the poll – I thought Angeli was winning, or maybe it was CJ. Though it's gonna be split. I bet if you pulled every single Notre Dame fan out there, I really don't even know who would win. Yeah, I think we'll be all right at tight end too. It's just one of those things where it's interesting to look at the depth chart and it's like, okay, well, we're relying on some guys that haven't been as reliable in previous years. But yeah, I mean, if there's any position, I was actually also just about to get in the offensive line too in that group. If there's any positions that you probably shouldn't be worried about with Notre Dame, it's probably offensive line and tight end. So same thing applies to offensive line. I'm going to get into each tight end or each position group over maybe the next 2 weeks. I got plenty of videos like planned. This is just a complete preview of this live, but yeah. But I mean, also at the same time, I do like kind of having a little bit more variety, at least in the spring. I mean, there's no point not, especially if we're trying to see what those quarterbacks can do specifically, if they can be a game changer. I mean, if you think CJ starts, I'm assuming that it's based off of maybe a lot of the, it's obviously based off the recruiting because he hasn't played, but we're talking about like that peak. Can he take this passing game to another level, right? We still didn't see that with Sam or Riley Leonard, right? Both of those guys, pretty renowned ACC full-time passers. And when we brought him over and weren't able to take that next step, maybe this in the spring, it's laid out completely. You don't have your security blanket. Go make a play. Go do something. So show us why you were that 4-star recruit. And maybe that'll end up giving the coaches the light to see. I think it'll be interesting. And apologies if I say that 100 times because I think the quarterback battle is going to be great. Based off of what I heard from practice from message board intel. Yeah, I mean, how much did he practice last year? You're talking about like all like going into like winter stuff? I mean, obviously there was a certain point where he was healthy. Yeah, I mean we'll have to see. I've just seen so many differing opinions. I think if you ask a lot of people, um, yeah, the defensive line. I just don't think we have like the high end, but I really like what they did in the portal. Which is what in the portal video I just made, I said the defensive line was kind of like the one area where I was like, oh well, we just went out and just tried to get at depth somewhere and just try to just to take a swing for the fences. I wanted to get into actually the 2025 recruiting cycle. We were graded pretty well. This obviously ended just a minute ago, but the 24/7 ranked as 12th, 24/7 composite 12th, ESPN 15th, Rivals 11th, On 3 12th, On 3 Industry 12th. Notre Dame signed 25 players and ranked somewhere between 11th and 15th in team rankings for all of the major services. Uh, it's not like that upper echelon, but who cares? Still pretty darn good and still pretty great um, in that world. So, uh, yeah, the transfer portal is pretty decent. So, yeah, I agree. We're on the same page for most of this. Yeah, I'm just taking a look at. I've got the entire list of guys that they were able to get committed. Um, Yeah, we'll see how this D line ends up turning out, though. I think it'll be okay. I mean, it ended up being okay down the stretch, even in the playoffs. So I'm kind of okay with that. I think the main issue is the wide receivers, but we got guys coming in that should be difference makers. We got guys that should be able to take that next step. I mean, imagine this team with an elite quarterback. Like, imagine it with like that really, really top flight guy. What stops Notre Dame from being like? They were obviously in the national championship this last season. Like, if there's one of those guys hit, like, and I mean, they're killing it. There's nothing that stops this team. We're looking at these other position groups, I'd say too, and we're expecting like that kind of level of play that can almost hide what's going on at quarterback. Like, I never felt like Sam Hartman or Riley Leonard were going to lose us a game necessarily, but I always felt like if the other team was just balling and one of those other positions wasn't playing at a top tier level, like I didn't really feel like we could catch up at all times. But last year it got so hot after the NIU loss, at a certain point, it was just going to ride the wave. And when I think back to that Indiana game, it was just the mauling between the lines was just insane to me. And same thing with Georgia, really too. There was like the Notre Dame team won the line of scrimmage against Georgia. But I'm curious as to how many people really value what Steve Angeli did in that game against Penn State, because I have seen, from what I have seen, it's a lot of people going with CJ or Kenny, and I get it. I think there's a little bit of like a maybe don't take the guy who's waited so long, but it could be. It could be. I'm trying to think back a little bit. The Quentin Nelson line was pretty sweet with McGlinchey. I don't know. Oh, did they got both drafted in the top like 15, right, of the NFL draft, or top 10? It was something wild. I'm just double checking. It's also a shame that I was thinking about Andrew Luck's career the other day. I think you're totally not alone. I just think it's one of those things where I think some people also, maybe even including myself, might just have a soft spot for him being there. Yeah, at least best since that line. Yeah, that's true. I mean, and you know what? Then we put all those pieces together. Then a lot of people might be like, oh, well, it doesn't even matter who you got a quarterback. Like he's just gonna be okay, like whatever. But to take this team to that next level, imagine putting that guy who can putting that guy in at the starting quarterback position who can put the team on his back and win us a game. That's pretty much unstoppable. Certainly no ACC team is stepping in the way of that. Not Miami in the first week if they're trying to figure everything out. Although I think Miami's going to be pretty decent this year. I don't think Carson Beck's that bad. So, his stock was down like towards like the middle and end of last season. I don't think he's that bad though. I think he gets a little bit of a bad rap. Maybe not an NFL guy, and should have never been projected as high as he was. But I digress. Rambling on. Yes, best since that line, and you want a guy that can take the team to the next level. Did we see that in the drive against Penn State? He was pretty good in the Sun Bowl. But I mean, even then, like at what point do you just like what's the threshold for previous experience, right? Is that even enough? Because certainly the other guys haven't gotten close to that. But what's the threshold to say, oh yeah, he had a game and a drive? So is that even prior experience to bank on? Probably not. Still at the same time, but certainly a high pressure situation. Also, they're bringing, he's been here for a while, so they're bringing in transfer guys, and they told you last year that he wasn't ready. Like, pretty much just, I would love to blow Miami out, but I'll take a 14-point win. Yeah, week one can be early in the week. Who knows how some of these teams look? I mean, even Notre Dame included, right? Like, we know who's going to go out there. We know how they're going to, who's going to lead the charge, lead them out the tunnel. That's Marcus Freeman, those boys. But yeah, anything can happen that first week. Just take it and move on. ESPN came out with their way too early top 25 rankings. They had Miami at 23. I almost think that might be even a little low. They're losing some guys. They're losing all their wide receivers, which is really tough for them. I mean, if you think a lot of people might, crap on the Notre Dame wide receivers and what we're having to do and trying to figure all that out. I think we've got some young guys brought in some good guys. The Miami Hurricanes are losing their top 4 targets, I believe. And then Elijah Arroyo as well. And then the next wide receiver. So they're losing, I think, 5. That was 5. But yeah. I mean, I think they'll win that. I mean, there was I can potentially look over the schedule this week as well, but that might be something like as the 2 best offensive linemen for the games are leaving 2 for Miami. I'd have to look at how much they're losing. Oh yeah, oh yeah, I'd have to look at how much they've lost. I feel like they've lost a lot. They lost more than I thought, honestly, but that kind of makes sense too. I mean, they were really good. I mean, they were still really good last year. The offense was amazing last year, so it makes sense that they're all leaving. And then for their defense, hopefully, for their sake, they've hit the transfer portal because that defense was all-time bad. I mean, realistically, we're talking about, if you put a top-flight quarterback on the Notre Dame football team, the sky's the limit for us. If that team just had a new set of 11 dudes on the other side of the football, I mean, maybe they don't lose all those games because that was really bad. They were escaping defeat multiple times that year. And I think they would have beat Iowa State personally if Cam Ward had played that full game. And Restrepo dipped to like an hour before the game started. But yeah. Yeah, we're super loaded there. I think we're oh man, I wish I had the full depth chart up in front of me. I'm going to go through the defense eventually when I get towards to like some of those depth chart look-sees and looking at that. The Xavier Watts thing actually reminds me a little bit too. There were 8 Notre Dame guys to get combine invites. Super fun. Riley Leonard, Bo Collins, Mitchell Evans, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, Jack Kaiser, Benjamin Morrison, and obviously Xavier Watts. And I said there was a really good article that Jordan Clark didn't get invited to the NFL Combine. He didn't get a Senior Bowl invite, and he ended up going to the Shrine Bowl. And so he just obviously he's kind of going the back way and having to fight his way through to get to the NFL. I mean, yeah, we're loaded at that position. I mean, there's so much depth. This recruiting has taken a complete full step, absolutely full step. I remember watching Notre Dame too, because I guess there's not really too much more that I had planned for this live, but just saying, I remember watching Notre Dame back in not the early BK days, but we're talking even still 2015 range, separate from that 4 and 8 year whichever year that happened, if that was 2016 or maybe I think it was 2016, but I remember it always being you maybe had guys that had that size and had that potential to be NFL. I mean, you had NFL guys always on the offensive line for the most part, but we just didn't have that depth that we have now. And then we kind of got the depth, I think, during those Ian Book years, and then that next level of player. Oh yeah, there was. The reputation that Notre Dame built during that time. I remember the Clemson game too. The Clemson game, the playoff game when it was I think it was 14-3, if I can remember correctly. Or maybe it was I'd have to double check that score. Or 3-10. And there was 2 minutes to go in the half. And just Trevor Lawrence, man. I mean, they scored quick, and the DB just got burnt and just clearly could not hold up. on like the right side. And that was, they had those NFL guys. Clemson was pumping out NFL wide receivers at that point too. And just went up the sideline. I remember then Notre Dame had a quick 3-and-out, and they did the same thing immediately. And that game just slipped through the fingertips of Notre Dame. It was 24-3 at half, if I can remember correctly. And then Clemson got the ball to start the third, and they had that long run, and the game, I think, ended 31-3. But I remember looking at that, and I was like looking at my dad too, obviously Notre Dame fan, and I remember like, dude, we had nobody in the secondary. I like the way that it happened so horrendously bad, so quickly. Things just absolutely like the house caught on fire immediately. Just the whole thing went up in flames. I was like, how did we survive for the first 28 minutes of the half? I was like, what is going on? And then, at that point, everybody's questioning recruiting. Can we win again? It's like 2020, right? Or maybe like right before that, 2019 or something. We're thinking like, or 2018, thinking like, oh my God, can we ever win? Like, I get to that level again. And I just think at a certain point it was excuses. And then obviously culture change. Brian Kelly getting out too. Talk about somebody that potentially don't miss too, being Brian Kelly. But obviously got to respect what he did for Notre Dame. Is he the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame? Does he have the all-time wins? He's either, if he doesn't, he's second. But yeah, I mean, obviously got to respect what he did, but just the whole culture change. And, you stop, like when you lose a game, you stopped asking, can we do it? Can we ever do it? You know what I mean? It was just that the whole defeatist, pessimistic attitude. And some of those concerns were very real though. Like, there wasn't anything where I looked at it and been like, well, yeah, shoot, we got mauled on the offensive line. And I thought our offensive line was good from like whoever it was. And it's just like, oh, he lost some wins. The 2012, right, was like that year's technically vacated? Or did he lose more? Because I thought he lost that one too. I'm like trying to look it up, but I literally can't even type properly. But yeah, I mean, I thought he had it actually. Like he got it like right on his way out of such. I think of that last year. Okay, he had it. Yeah, I mean, so it's like you got to respect like what he had done for the program and everything. But it's very interesting, seeing a breakup like that. Oh, maybe 2013 too. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, maybe that's what I was also thinking of. So maybe it was just 23. Can't remember. Oh, because of the whole. It was just like a tutoring thing, right? I forgot, like a homework thing. Which now, in comparison, based off of what's going on now, I mean, obviously everything's legal, but based off of like looking back at that time, it's like, Jesus Christ, why would anybody ever get punished for that? I mean, like it's world's worst kept secret, right? Who is doing their homework? I mean, even at Notre Dame, realistically, come on. Oh yeah, you were not alone there with rooting against him at LSU. Also, too, when the like juxtaposition of like Marcus Freeman coming out too, when everything got figured out, and it's true that because you're like you don't want to be a bitter ex when you're in a relationship, So if the team's doing good, there's no point in rooting against LSU. You're thinking, oh, like shoot, if we're on the same level, like I'm gonna root against LSU, like. But if you're, fine within your own situation, maybe not so much. But I remember like just the amount of people that did hate him, and just like looking back at it, like I get it. And it was also kind of foreshadowing what would be so great about Marcus Freeman when we finally got everything figured out. And we knew he was gonna be the coach. He comes out in that famous locker room video. They showed that so many times during the playoff run, and he comes out and this entire team just embraces him. And it's just like this whole like, yes, needed to be you. You were the answer. This puts us in a great spot. This is awesome. And then it's Brian Kelly dancing and putting with recruits and their recruiting videos and putting on a Southern accent or Cajun accent. And it's like, maybe he was like slightly more out of touch than we thought. He just didn't need to be that guy at Notre Dame necessarily. He just needed to, win and just yell a lot and talk about whatever it is that Notre Dame kind of kept him in that box to make sure that he wouldn't say anything or do something stupid or look stupid. And then he goes to LSU and you're like, oh, well, shoot, maybe Notre Dame was kind of his security blanket in a sense too, because when you build it, that might be harder than keeping it, but once it was built to that point, I mean, it kind of helped him too. Maybe it looks like because LSU, but LSU is always so great with recruiting talent, And maybe things are a little different with NIL and the transfer portal with the turnover rate. It's so great that it might be tougher to stay consistently good for, a long time, but he should still be okay. I mean, if they can win a week 1, that could potentially change some stuff too. They struggle in week 1. They schedule tough in week 1 too. But that was something that was so great about this Notre Dame season was that we got the Texas A&M win. Because looking back at it, I mean, who would have even? I mean, God, the season started out 0-2 with losses. I mean, even the Texas A&M loss would have been respectable. I'm not saying that, but with the Texas A&M loss and then NIU, shoot, somebody put me down, bro. Like this season's over. I don't know if Notre Dame would have got in with 2 losses this year. I don't think they would have. I mean, but then who would have been, right? Alabama? Nah, I mean, they were ranked. They were the highest next team, but I digress. That was last season. I'm going on a whole tangent, a whole rant, but yeah, Brian Kelly certainly don't miss him, but appreciate everything that he did for this program. It's Marcus Freeman's game. He's got the keys to the vehicle, and we're doing good. 2025 football. No Bama would have gotten in. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't even know where Notre Dame would have been ranked because they would have been like they could have been like would they have been ahead of Miami? I don't because they had that whole jumble of teams that played each other, the Bama, South Carolina, and another team that played. Well, I don't know why I'm forgetting. Oh, Ole Miss? Yeah. That whole jumble of teams that like everybody had like a head-to-head against each other. And it was weird. It kind of makes you question how you rank teams personally when you look at it. They're still looking for another front office person to join the Lions guy. Where did you see that? I don't think that that's the wrong decision, or that doesn't sound false at all. I think Notre Dame's really trying to lean into the NFL model. So I don't see why you wouldn't just have a complete front office, a full-fledged like front office. I mean, shoot, the team that won the national championship this year had that $20 million payroll. I don't see why you don't completely fully invest. I'm curious as to where you saw that, because I might want to take a look at that for a future video, because that sounds like something that the Notre Dame team should do, especially since they lost their guy, right? Like, and having this whole search will be in charge of the portal, and the other guy will be charged of high school recruiting. Yeah, that's interesting. I at the beginning of this live, I talked a little bit about the different. I gotta find. Okay, but I read this really really great article by the Athletic, and it was they interviewed 3 GMs anonymously in college football, and they were all like front office guys in the new age of how these teams are run and programs, and they gave those different I don't know, I'm losing the word. They gave like the different principles that you needed to run and what were the most important things and how do you look at it. And I thought it was really interesting because it really had so much to do with recruiting, and obviously it does, right? Because you're trying to bring in new talent. College football has always been recruiting. You recruit well, shoot, now you got the pieces to coach and you win a ton of games. A very simple formula, but the way that they were looking at it was evaluating your own talent and seeing what's out there in the portal and seeing what's out there in recruiting, but making sure that you knew exactly what you wanted. You were on the same page as the coach. And it was that true NFL model. So that would kind of make a lot of sense that they would want to bring in another guy and split it. There's so much that goes on in college football. It's been a year-round sport for forever now. But to be able to have a good understanding of the portal, like if you really like watch and look at who is entering the portal when that thing is open, there are thousands of guys that enter the portal, like in each like season, and more than that for sure. I would love to actually let me. I'm looking up the number really quick. I mean, there are so many guys that join the portal. How can you possibly have a good grasp on the portal and high school recruiting? Obviously, you get paid to do your job, but that's a lot. So when you're number one thing in the front office, okay, so in the college football transfer portal, I'm looking at 2025, 2,700 players entered, 15, almost 1,600, 1,598 committed, only 100 withdrew. What happened to the rest? But still, it's, they're just stuck in there, I guess. I don't know. Or what are the other status possibilities, right? Withdrawn, committed, signed, enrolled. Yeah, that's probably why it says that. But still, because obviously some players are waiting for the summer. But yeah, how could you possibly have an amazing understanding of that without having somebody to help you? Obviously, they got plenty of guys and they got the information at the quickest times. They're talking to the recruits before they even hop in the portal. Let's be realistic. So, but that would make sense. You got to split that up, right? I mean, to have like a Notre Dame just had the junior day just recently. So I'm looking at you're looking at the portal that's going on. You need to thank you. You need to look at this. I'm gonna find this. But you need to assess the portal. You need to assess your own team. You need to assess the guys that aren't in the 2026 class, but the guys that are in the following year. And you need to have your year this year ready, right? Obviously, we're in a different spot. It wouldn't be that right now, with some of those guys, but still, same thing applies. There's so many things that are going on that you need to look at, and that's a tough gig. And so I'm all for not having it on one person. Also, with this search, what has been going on over the last handful of weeks? I'm sure there's some people picking up the slack. Certainly not saying that the office remains empty during that time, but you kind of catch up to speed a little bit. He says it in the article. Hold on, let me pull it up. I mean, I'm all for it though. It makes sense, right? Like it does. It has to make some sort of sense. Hey, shout out Jackson. Auburn's director of recruiting, Watson, the guy that successfully flipped Deuce Knight, interestingly enough, but he decided to stay at Auburn with the big raise. Why wouldn't he, right? The line. Is that who it mentions in the article? Hold on, I'm trying to sift through this really quick. Or it just says that they're looking, right? Martin would take over the general manager role. According to sources, Freeman plans to alter that role compared to what it was before. Okay, that makes sense. With his background in scouting, Martin will have a key role in evaluation and would oversee all aspects of talent acquisition. Freeman also plans to make another hire for someone to specifically lead recruiting, especially high school recruiting. Yes, with Martin overseeing that role as well as the transfer portal, the current roster, and more. Okay. I mean, yeah, it just says that they're looking, but that's good stuff because there's going to be another hire. And I'd imagine it should come within the next week, right? Or can you wait on that? I mean, I think why not bring another guy aboard? Obviously, I mean, they answer to Freeman, so it just depends. But obviously, being on the same page as the head coach is really important, and that's something that is key. Is key. Is necessary for the people to do. Who knows? Who knows who they end up deciding on that though? There's some really interesting articles out here now that I'm taking a look on it. But I keep saying this. I'm a fan of this model. I think that is the way that you got to go to continue. And if they are on the same page as Marcus Freeman, I don't see this as a bad thing whatsoever. They see it as a roll out the money, man, and don't lose these guys. Right? If this is hopefully this doesn't end up being one of those positions that's a consistent career stepping stone where you end up having to get these guys in and out like it's some sort of assistant coaching job, even though you kind of do answer to Freeman, but at the same time got to make it worth their while to keep them in house. But it should be fun. Man, we've been here for 50 minutes, bro. Texas A&M. Well, I'm looking at the Athlon Sports, like the whole website right now. Yeah. I mean, but they're not. They're not like. Where can I go to see the exact NIL that's being reported? There's a place for that, right? Where you can kind of see exactly what they're throwing out, because I don't think that these Southern schools are paying that much more than what Notre Dame. I mean, certainly, I think Notre Dame can. But I don't think they're blowing us out of the water. But I'm curious as to, you know, I've never been. I'm from Florida, but I grew up a Notre Dame fan. I really wanted to go to South Bend for the Notre Dame Indiana one, but it was too much money. I could not afford it, unfortunately. But yeah, I grew up a Notre Dame fan with my because of my dad. Um, just like watching the games and stuff. But yeah, I hope Notre Dame USC stays forever, Jackson. That would be a very depressing life if that one was gone. But Martin will be whoever takes the job Watson interviewed for, like Chad was Trace Boss. Oh yeah, been to a few games. How was it? Which games did you go to? And they got Malachi Fields as the top Notre Dame portal pickup. Yeah, I mean, he's one of them. He was. I actually have to look at my list because I made one. You know, it sounds like a baby. You brought up. There's so many. There's a laundry list of rivalries that have gone away because of conference realignment, and then there's a weird, like little chunk that have come back. Obviously, including some of the ones that we see in the SEC right now, right? Which ones in the SEC came back that were came back like every now and then? Oh, Texas A&M, but um, Arkansas and Texas got on that one too, right? They got a rivalry. It's been a while. Clemson 2022 and USC 2023. Clemson 22 was a win, right? That was a minute ago. I get these years so jumbled up whenever I think back to them. Yeah, 35-14. At least Jen Cohen's answer or lack of answer on the future. Yeah, no, I talked about that earlier. I didn't understand the reasoning for that. Like that was my main issue. I was trying to like explain it. I might end up making a video on that this week and just talking about like what has been going on with, the greatness of that rivalry. I just thought there was no point, you know? Like there was no like, oh no, it's good. But I was like, I don't understand as like why there was any need to say, oh, in a perfect world, like we would love to keep it going. It's like there's no point in it ever leaving. It's right there. It's great for both programs. First of all, with USC now, not I don't know if they really ever wanted to always like leave the Pac-12, but they were certainly like the strength of the Pac-10, in the mid 2000s. So if they're in a Big Ten conference now, they're in the Big Ten and they're in the main two conferences. They want an easier schedule to make the playoffs more. But now you could get more losses though. Too though. I feel like it's a little different as far as when you look at it like that. I mean, we're gonna see more from the committee. The playoffs just going to continue to expand. It almost looks like, right? Because there was an SEC Big Ten meeting just the other day. Now we're talking ACC contract that Notre Dame has. I mean, geez, right? If you're going to get into like, oh, the Notre Dame's going to join the Big Ten and sometime in the 2030s, guys, if they join in 2036, I'll be 34. Should be a great time. Hopefully by that point, I would have made it to a game. See, but I'm going to go back to the easier schedule thing. First of all, who doesn't? Who doesn't want to just run the table and clear their schedule and make it end like that? I mean, especially if they're going to reward one-loss teams. And you could I know there's plenty of people that put Notre Dame in that category like last year, but I don't know. I just think it gets to the point where you have so many obstacles that the committee they don't count those losses as much, obviously, right? Like they're looking at this gauntlet of a potential season that you have with USC, having like Notre Dame, and then if the Big Ten, depending on who they play and who they draw, like I don't really see how they would get punished too much. I mean, I think eventually we almost saw that. Oh my God, what team was it? Was it the Auburn team that went like had all of those miracles down the road, make it towards the end? If SC could manage 10-2 versus a slate that includes ND, OSU, Michigan, and Penn State. Yeah, I mean, they know they hired a lemon. Yeah, it does. Yeah, how many years does Lincoln Riley still have on his thing? And then, I mean, you started hearing stuff like last year where it's like, hey, like, what's going on here? Like, why haven't they figured it out yet? But Miller Moss continued. Like, I was on the Miller Moss like hype train for a second there because I thought he was a good quarterback, and then I like there was like 3 straight weeks where he threw 3 picks and like multiple pick sixes in like a couple of those games, and I was like, no, I'm off this. So I can't really blame Lincoln Riley too much. I don't know exactly the ins and out of the ACC contract. I have to double check if that would ever get restructured. I mean, as far as I ever know from it's pretty airtight. But if like Miami, Florida State, Clemson, like put the squeeze on the entire conference, like I'd imagine something has to change. Everything feels like it's so set in stone in college football until somebody comes with money, and and then at that point, it's like, well, although something tells me NBC is going to help ND leave the ACC for the Big Ten. No way NBC is happy with ND Louisville. Yeah. And CBS having Notre Dame Purdue as much as ACC officiating is given ours. I mean, I think like Notre Dame has built some very interesting and fun ties with the ACC. And it's always different when you look at like the basketball part of it too, and like the other sports, but we all know that unfortunately that doesn't matter at all, or else the Big East would still be around. But yeah, it dies even. USC wanting out of ND rivalry. I don't really know how real that is. It's just there was a very interesting interview with the AD, Jennifer Cohen, and it was not this non-committal thing, but she just phrased the rivalry and the future of it as in you'd want to continue in a perfect world. And you'd think that rivalry would be able to, you know, yeah, you'd think that you would be able to get through that and keep the rivalry alive even in a world that was like 75% perfect. And there's a lot going on in college football, so I get it. Never say never. Never say we're best friends forever, but I think in a 75% perfect world it survives. Maybe if we get to that 60% and stuff starts hitting the fan and the Big Ten and the SEC start having their own playoff or something, then maybe we're talking about something different. But I think we might still be a minute away from that. I don't really like 14 teams. I don't really want any more teams in the college football playoff, to be honest with you guys. Like, I was looking at college basketball the other day, and I was like, God, the way that sport looks. The NBA is under a lot of heat right now, how that product looks. And then it's just like when you look at college basketball, I can't even really watch college basketball. Like the way that it looks, it's like none of the games. First of all, none of the games matter. And then 8. Yeah, I always was saying 8 teams. I was so shocked when we jumped from 4 to 12. I was like, how? And then 6 was all the rage back in the 2016 time, right? Like everybody was like, Baylor and TCU, man, 6 would have been perfect. That was pretty much the one thing that they all said immediately. 8 would have been fine too. But then, you got into those tie-ins and then you started to realize these numbers are adding up really quickly. And whoever wins their conference, they have to get in. It makes sense from that perspective, right? Like to a degree. Now, do the buys make sense for them? Yeah, it did something for those group of 5 teams. It's kind of unfortunate. Like, I feel like as much as we've given to as a mid-major that's always on the bubble, you're talking about college basketball. I think you're talking about college basketball. I interpreted that as in the like a Cincinnati team or something like that trying to make it into the playoff. I think it's so great, though, to at least see that, and obviously this year we stumbled into Boise State getting a bye. That would be something that I thought they were going to adjust is the conference champions getting a bye, but then at the same time, it looks so funky leading into conference championship week where you're like, okay, well, some teams can't move after this week yet. Basketball. I mean, I like college basketball. It just gets to the point where like 9 in and 9 out, it's like a little bit tough sometimes to follow like the sport as a whole. But if you got a team, like it's probably a much better time, I'd imagine. But I think it just depends on whether or not you root for a team. Yeah, we're the group of 5 teams, right? And it's kind of interesting too, because now with the conference realignment, some of those worthy group of 5 teams or the teams that were like those higher echelon group of 5 teams are now in the power 4. And they're, good chunk of them are in the Big 12. And it's like, well, they kind of had a little bit of a reset. Instead of a bye, get the conference champs a home game. Was there a conference champion on the road? Though? Arizona State? Wait, hold up. I need to retake a look at this graph at the bracket. Well, why am I forgetting? There was one team that was on the road that won the conference? Because wouldn't that well, they'd have a bye. That's why I'm tripping now. Okay, because they wouldn't be in the first round, so they were all at a neutral site. Yeah. Okay, yes, yeah. Clemson was on the road against Texas, but it's almost so tough because like, why would Clemson get the home field against Texas? Because like I get Clemson beat SMU, but then you're going to start like weighing it. But I get it. It's kind of tough to fix. It's very tough, like looking at it to fix the college football playoff. It's like, well, shoot, like who are going to get the buys or whatever? They really screwed the CFP buys this past season. Every buy team lost second round. Yeah, rest versus rust, right? But I always thought like rest was going to be better. But I just think maybe like it'll make for a better game. Yeah, probably. I just always thought though, like you go for the rest and then maybe you just don't wait so long before you play the some of those games. I'd have to double check the schedule because now we're getting into the end. College football playoff. I actually had a buddy. I was trying to explain it to him. They only watched like soccer, but he was getting into the college football playoff, and I was trying to explain actually how the bracket works. And I think I got a pretty decent understanding of it. Obviously, not like I'm gonna make mistakes trying to call on stuff from memory from last year, but I was trying to explain it, and I realized actually from the starting perspective of having never seen the sport before, explaining why these things are the way that they are, it makes me feel like I'm watching the wrong way to declare a champion. So I'm like trying to explain it, and I'm like, we got here because of this. We got here because we couldn't use computers anymore. Do we trust the playoff committee? No, we don't trust them either. I don't think they're so bad, but a lot of people do. So what was I checking? I was going to check the bracket from last year. It's all jumbled. The one team where I really saw that was like when Ohio State killed Tennessee and they were going into Oregon or like doing the Rose Bowl. And I was like, oh my God. Like Oregon was so flat in that game. And Ohio State was almost like the hottest team I had ever seen. And they had built that. Clemson was that tech. Yeah. And they almost built that so quickly. Quicker than any team I'd ever seen build that much momentum. Like ever. Okay, yeah, they won the ACC. Okay, yeah, I get you now. But then how could you argue that they don't that they should be home though? Yeah. And that loss to South Carolina is so interesting as well. That team was a good team this year. I'm looking forward to what could go on with them next year, and with Sellers, and they got a recent recruit too. But now we're talking about South Carolina. But yeah, I think Notre Dame's going to do a good job here. I think just getting everything. It's just who's going to be the starter for Miami, right? Is it going to be the same guy that ends the season? That'll probably be the main question for this team. I think everything that we've talked about today is going to be like, hey, we're working it out in the playoffs, getting the front office figured out. The winter portal was good, looking good. We're going to get some guys in the spring. We're going to get some guys in the summer. And, and it's just like Notre Dame women's, they've always been pretty good. I was watching there was a game on yesterday. It was UConn. Was it UConn, South Carolina? UConn just torched South Carolina. Paige Beckers. She's a bucket. But everything's going good though with this with the Notre Dame program. It's just all about, will the first guy who leads the team out onto the field against the Hurricanes be the guy at the very end of the year? Maybe. Maybe not. I mean, I don't I think barring disaster, right? Barring disaster. That game ends up being like a blowout and Miami beats Notre Dame. Maybe there's a different guy in week 2. August 31st. August 31st. Texas A&M too. Get a bye in between that. That's not so bad. Boise State. God, we don't have to take on Genty. Even though you can kind of like zero in on him, that Penn State game, like Boise State, like somehow didn't like, they threw themselves out of the game, but like they somehow stayed relatively competitive that whole game. Sucks the offseason is so long. It does. It does. I'm going to be doing some like probably some NFL combine stuff. Indy blows out Miami in their house. Hey man, I hope so. How much money you putting on that though? Like, what's this? I wonder what the spread would be for that. We'll know more when we get closer. Yeah, and then I'd say we're doing pretty easy on the rest of the schedule though. I'm looking at it too. I know Chris did a schedule breakdown, but yeah, after the Boise State game, now Arkansas could be a little slightly sneaky. Run all over Miami's defense. Yeah, if they haven't done anything from last year or fixed any of that this game, it would be a rout. I think if Notre Dame played Miami last year, it would have been wraps. It would have just been like, what kind of plays can Cam Ward muster up throughout the game throughout the game to get them some points. But outside of that, I don't think Miami's defense would have been able to hold on to their to the man right in front of them. They would have just got pancaked the whole way. I'd put a paycheck on that. Oh, 2000. Okay. All right. I think we've covered everything in this hour-long live. Now, some channel updates before we get out of here. Going to be coming out with videos, hopefully 5 throughout the rest of this week, where we're just talking about very specific topics, depth chart, combine stuff for the NFL guys. If news drops about like the front office hires, that'll be really crucial. Maybe potentially welcoming in a co-host, whether or not that happens next week or the week after that, coming soon. So, but it's just me right now, just all alone. So we're going to be having fun and more planned out stuff coming in the future. We're talking 7:30 on Monday nights. So hopefully that time works for everybody. Might throw a poll out into the community tab as well, just see what everybody wants, and they can just have a complete say in what time this live goes up, because could potentially move it whatever time is best for the people that are interacting. But guys, thank you so much for joining this chat and this live and keeping up with everything. I can't wait to keep going on this Notre Dame channel. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Some more Notre Dame football content. See you.